Testing 1, 2, 3, 4. Test, test, test. Testing. Hubert is a penis brain. Test, test, test.
So going to put that in the episode.
I'm Gerardo Poli.
I'm Hubert Hemstra, and this is the Vet Vault. Our guest for this episode of the Business and Leadership series is Dr. Zach Lederhose. Zach was about 2 years out of university and only 26 years old, so about 3 or 4 years younger than I am now, when he decided to take the big plunge into practice ownership. Now, practice ownership is a long-term goal for many vets, but most of us feel that we need a certain level of age or expertise or wisdom before we can even begin to consider taking that plunge, which is why when I heard about Zach and his decision to jump straight in so soon after vet school, I thought we had to get him here and cross-examine him on his decision-making and the repercussions of that decision.
We cover career progression, plateaus, pivots, and bucking the career trajectory trend. Zach talks us through his decision-making process leading him to buying the practice and talks us through some of the challenges he faced. He gives advice on how to prepare yourself for a leadership role and how to prepare your new team for change. We talk about good mistakes, creating your inner circle, and how to put processes in place to guard against burnout. And if you're already a business owner or a more seasoned vet, don't be fooled by Zach's age. This episode offers some sound business principles, so it's well worth a listen.
Hello, Vet Vaulters, and welcome back to another episode of the Vet Vault, and specifically our Business and Leadership series. I'm very excited about tonight. We're going to grill somebody and get some good information out of our guest for the night. Shibly knows our guest. He's going to introduce him to us. Zach Lederhose, welcome to the podcast. Shibly, tell us who he is.
Welcome, Zach. I have the pleasure of introducing a really awesome dude. Zach, some of you may have seen him contributing massively on social media. Zach is an up-and-coming youngster. I'm going to call you a youngster because you're not as grey as I am, Zach. But you did a really brave, smart, maybe scary, stupid thing. Let's find out what it was. But you decided at a fairly young stage in your career to jump into veterinary practice ownership. And I believe you bought a practice out sort of country, rural Australia, and an existing practice. And, you know, you've certainly given it a good run for its money. So great pleasure to have you on tonight, Zach, because it's certainly a rare breed. We don't see many young vets diving into practice ownership early on, and we'd love to find out a bit more about your journey. So can you tell us a little bit about how it all started?
Yeah, well, first of all, it's great to be on the podcast, and great to have Shibly grilling me. It's a nice change. So yeah, I guess I am a youngster. I'm 26 and graduated vet school at 23. So haven't been long in the game, but a couple of years out, I had an opportunity to buy a clinic in a country town, and then I've just been working on that for the last year and a half, and it's been doing really, really well. It's a lot of fun and a lot of hard work. So I haven't decided whether it's crazy, stupid, or what else yet.
Wow. So just give us a bit of a rundown, Zach. And one, congratulations on taking the plunge into business ownership. That is a big plunge. Like, were you really, really drunk when you decided to? No, just kidding. But like, give us a bit of a rundown when, where your practice is, and like, is it small? Is it mixed? Is it, or?
Yeah, so I'm in Goulburn, which is a couple of hours south of Sydney, an hour north of Canberra. So we're not out in the sticks, but we're a regional centre, and it's a smallish clinic. So dogs, cats, birds, lizards, but yeah, anything that can come through the door.
Lambs can come through the door, apparently. Like, we've had lambs in our emergency hospital, and everyone's like, "What do we do? It's so cute. We don't know what to do, but it's so cute."
Yeah, so moved to Goulburn and settled in, and it's just been a constantly changing ride from the start, and every couple of months, like it's changing, and it's a heap of fun.
So I'm curious, you say that you had the opportunity. Was practice ownership on the cards for you like when you were going through vet school, or when you qualified, were you like, I want to get into it as soon as possible, or was it just, how did it actually happen?
It was always in the 10-year plan. So going through vet school, it was always like, that's something that I'm going to do at some stage, and I'm going to take the chance when it comes. But it wasn't supposed to happen this quickly, But when you get your ducks in a row, and being a regional area, when your partner has a job in the town, and there's an opportunity and you can see yourself doing something, it's either I wait 3 years to take the opportunity in 3 years' time, or I take it now. And I thought, you know what, why not now?
Can you go through your decision-making process there? Like, what are the things that you weighed up? Or was I right in that you were drunk and you didn't really decide very well and you just did it? I'm not saying you didn't decide very well, right? But, like it was a split thing and then you're like, bam, let's do it. Or was it kind of like, you just said before you have a 10-year plan, right? I don't know if maybe 10% of the people I know maybe have a 10-year plan, which then makes me think that it was a pretty calculated decision. What kind of things were in your head there?
Gerardo's just obsessed about people making drunk decisions because he made a decision to do a podcast when he was drunk, and now he's stuck with it and he can't get out of it.
Saved you from writing a book, man. I saved you from writing a book.
2 years later, he's still being punished, is he?
No, you're exactly right, Gerardo. It was a calculated decision. So it was getting to a point a couple of years out. What do you do next? You've got to keep pushing. And the traditional thing when I thought about it, going into vet school and through vet school, was I'll go and locum for a couple of years and then I'll come back and I might go and do a specialty. That classic thing that you hear about, or we get itchy feet and you go to another clinic, or you do something else. But I was quite, I guess, spoiled not spoiled in a way, but I was lucky that I kind of worked very hard and did a lot of on-call work and kind of, as a clinician, developed my skills quite quickly. And so I reached a cap of what I could do as a general practice junior clinician. And so the choice was, do I go and specialize, or do I do an internship or pursue that side of things in that area of growth, or do I go and take on like a managing director type role in a corporate, or do I go out on my own? And the going out on my own had more pros than cons.
Yeah, like it's really interesting you say that 2 years, because that's the plateau, right? There's an incredible growth and challenge in the first 6 to 24 months, right? And then all of a sudden you've seen so much stuff that maybe 90% of the things you see every day are pretty routine, and then that 10% a bit of a challenge enough. But then you go, is this it? Is this the limits of my career within the environment that I'm in? So then you go, okay, so I change my environment, or do I change my mentors? And I was at a conference, and I asked, it was like 100 students, 100 new grads. And I asked, like, how many people feel like as if they're going to want to quit, want to change the career? Like how many people had reached this plateau that I was talking about? About 40% of them did. And they were...
So 2 years in, you say?
Yeah, within 2, but some just graduated. Some were 2 years. And it was the Hills recent graduate retreat, which is really good. Anyone who has the opportunity to go to one of those things should go. And it just highlighted to me that some people, like Zach, you did the brave thing and you decided, there's 3 options. Really, most people think there's only 3 options: business ownership, internship, change career, or stay the same and just, this is my career and this is, what I've got to do somehow.
It's a courageous thing. It's a courage thing for sure to make that leap. I know certainly when I was Zach's age, I don't think I had the guts to make that jump, because I had this impression that you need more experience. So 2 years experience, not enough. I need to see more clinically before I could take on those new challenges. And I think I was wrong. I actually saw a quote the other day, not vet related, that I really like. It says that 10 years experience can sometimes be just 1 year's experience repeated 10 times. And I think that's what happens to people who hit that plateau. You go, yeah, I'm actually just doing the same thing over. I was actually there 5 years ago. Could have done it.
I totally agree that you're wrong there, Hubert. I agree that you're right about being wrong. It's the years of clinical experience don't make you a better leader, and make you better at business, because vaccinating and spaying and treating, working up cases doesn't make you develop the skills that make you a good leader and part of a team like that. Like, it's a whole different skill set, and you got to start working on that skill set.
So how did you do that? Sorry, I interrupted. I knew you were going to ask that.
No, okay, Mike. We're going to ask you 2 questions. You get to choose which one you want to answer.
Okay,
Cool.
cool.
I've got a third one.
Third question. Okay. My question just goes and leads on from the first question, which was, was it a calculated question? But like, what often people kind of like, oh, I don't want to do that because if I do that, these things could happen. So they have this kind of fear, this loss aversion. They don't want to kind of like I don't want to lose this, because they don't realize that you could do probably both at the same time. So they don't want to do something because they feel like they're going to miss something, or they feel like there's too many unknowns. Like, but then the question they got to ask themselves is, what information that I need to get for me to feel like as if the decision-making process that I'm going through is more calculated. Like, so you said that your decision-making process was calculated, but what kind of information did you need for yourself? Was it like profit statements or something, or was it like a number of clientele? Was it enough that you had experience and feel? Like, I don't know, what was your decision? What was the things that contributed to your decision to buy, apart from the plateau?
Yeah, so I needed to know that I could feed myself. That was a part of it. So I needed to know that I was actually able to build the procedures and do the work, and I had the clinical competence to actually be able to run a clinic. And that comes from working sole charge and mentoring other vets and things like that. But the other thing that came into it was just getting a little bit of perspective on, yes, it's a big scary thing, but it's not the end of the world. Like, if I failed and had to sell a business, I'd go and work for a few years, and then it would all be distant memory, in 5-10 years. But it's about, not making it a bigger problem than what it is, and a bigger challenge, breaking it down.
Yeah.
I think that's really interesting. I'm just going to jump in there. I love that sort of thought process in making a decision, because I do see a lot of the time through coaching, and especially through helping newer graduates with making decisions, they sort of feel like it's all or nothing. And, if I go down this pathway, the consequences of failure are so massive that I'm too scared to go for it. Where it sounds to me like you had a plan B, you had a safety net, you had a fallback going, hey, I'm going to do this thing, and you went in all out, but you had this sort of safety net that, hey, if it all goes belly up, I can still go back to working. Like, I'm young, I can start again, big deal.
That's one of my favorite things about vet, is that safety net. People whinge about vet that it doesn't pay well, and that the reality is you always have that safety net. You can try whatever the hell you want. If you run out of money, put up your hand, you'll have a job within a couple of weeks, and boom, you're feeding yourself. So it's really lovely to know that.
But also, I think comes to as well that what Zach has there is a level of courage and confidence. You said it was courageous before, Hubert, but confidence in the fact that if it doesn't work out, like, he knows he's got this is me thinking like, hey, I'm not Zach, right? Okay. But it's like,
he's much better looking than you.
But it was like, okay, what I'm saying is, what I see in you, Zach, is the fact that actually you had the confidence to go, look, I'm going to give this a go. I know that I can go, that everyone has that safety net. So it's not necessarily a safety net. It's the fact that actually you had confidence in yourself, and you backed yourself to go, look, even if it doesn't fail, I can work it out. Wherever I'm at, I can work it out. That's what I kind of see in you, as opposed to just the safety net of, I have my career still and I'm young.
Yeah, and it's something that's not comfortable, for sure. I mean, no one wants to experience failing, but I tell you what, I'd rather fail with taking over what was a one vet clinic, and trying something, rather than saving up for another 5 years until I was a better vet, in inverted commas, before taking on a bigger project and failing at that one. So it's trying to fail small rather than go all in later on.
Zach, I'm curious about the lead up to this. I know we spoke about that sort of 2-year plateau, but we find with a lot of people who get into business, their business journey doesn't start when they're in their 20s or their 30s. It started like really, really young, and it might be influenced from their parents, or watching certain things in their life which have impacted them, and they kind of made a decision going, I'm never doing this, I'm definitely doing that. What was the journey for you? Because ultimately, 2 years out, most vets are not thinking of that. They're thinking, how can I leapfrog into getting more experience, doing an internship, changing direction, pivoting? But generally that pivot doesn't involve jumping into my own practice. So when did that journey, the sort of entrepreneurship journey, start for you? What was that influence?
Well, I guess it's about, for me, whenever I come across that kind of concept, it's all about modeling. And if you can see people like you doing that thing, and so growing up, I didn't have heaps of that. Like, our family is not entrepreneurial. But when I got to vet school, I took the opportunity to get involved in the AVA and go to as many conferences as possible as a student. And at these conferences, I'd meet people from all walks of vet life. So, I'd hang out with the equine vets, I'd hang out with the exotic vets, I'd hang out with basically anybody who would buy me a drink at the pub after the dinner. But what it showed me was a huge range of different vets. And so I got to start thinking about, the challenges that are affecting vets, not so much the challenges that are affecting students, because this is like second, third year. You're thinking about the next exam, you're thinking about the next prac that you've got to get ready for. And so when I got to speak to these people, I kind of found myself more interested in the, business streams and the practice management and looking at those kinds of things as being really interesting, in addition to the clinical things, rather than trying to find out, the latest way to treat a corneal ulcer or something like that, which is all important. But I was gravitating towards that from, halfway through vet school.
That's great. I like your approach though. That's it's an unusual approach, but I think it's a great approach, is to, from early on in your career, to keep your mind open to go beyond just work, because we all get so focused on clinical. It's excellent that you had the foresight to do that. So you mentioned leadership earlier. Well, that is a challenge. It's a fun challenge, but it is a challenge. How big is your team, Zach?
We've got 8 people now in the team. So it started with 2 of us, me and a nurse, and now we got 8 people. So we've got 2 vets now and 4 nurses. Sorry, and a trainee. So that's 8. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. So how are you learning about leadership? Are they official resources that you went to, or are you just learning on the fly? What are you doing to get good at this?
Yeah, well, I was at my first job. We did some stuff on leadership. So that was a big focus of my first boss, to make sure that we had that kind of vocabulary and we were sharing. But, there's so many resources out there and so many things that you can look at. You can go to the conferences, you can talk to people, but a lot of it is just looking at the information that's out there and saying, hey, people are putting out some really good stuff, and you see enough of it and you say, okay, these are the things that actually speak true, and these are the people who are walking the walk, and learning from them, But yeah, I've gone to conferences and paid for things, but there's also so many books and podcasts and everything that you can check out.
You were saying before, just then, my impression, maybe hopefully I listened and heard everything, but your journey from graduation to now, my assumption was that actually this is your first job. So did you work so it sounded like as if you worked in a practice where your boss then valued leadership and training and things, and then that's where kind of like, I don't know, it helped solidify something in your mind, right? But then the opportunity came arise, not necessarily because that was your job out of graduation, but you saw actually the opportunity was there. Like, so what, you went into a practice and then you moved from that practice into this practice and then you bought it, or how did that go?
Yeah, so I started in practice, Snowy Vets, down in Cooma, and I was there for coming up on 2 years, I think. And then saw this practice in a completely different town, completely different part of New South Wales, and saw that one was for sale, and it was basically a 6-week changeover between the old owner and me.
Wow.
So a whole new place.
That's kind of cool. So what were the challenges you faced? Like, like if you could think about the first couple of things that you really have to tackle, like what were the things that you kind of had to tackle there?
Look, change is hard for a lot of people. And so the big challenge was people had been used to seeing the previous owner there for 30 years. It was over 30 years. And then there's this young fella who's coming in, most of the preparation I did was made sure that I grew out my stubble so that the people didn't think I was 12. So yeah, it was managing the client expectations, and a key part of that for me was keeping the nurse that I had on. She'd been there for quite a while beforehand, and managing that transition was super important. That was the biggest challenge. And then the training the clients on what to expect and the new way we do things and things like that was less of a challenge. I mean, a lot of people, I hear that talked about a lot as one of the big challenges when you take over a clinic, but we're all singing from the same song sheet, and most people take the dog to the vet once a year. It's 20 minutes. If you can control that experience and give them a really good experience, and just be really gentle with it, and not be like, oh, everything was wrong for the last 15 years and no, this is the new way we're doing things. It's just taking people on that journey and realizing that people aren't going to take that step so quickly for, all across the board.
Zach, I love the approach. It's sort of softly, gently, and then slowly winning people over. Now they talk about buying a clinic, and generally in the first year you will drop about 20% in revenue, because a lot of that goodwill that was tied up with the old guy who everybody loved and knew for the last 40 years, he's now moved on. Did you experience a drop then? What did you do to sort of counteract that?
Yeah, so for us, a lot of what we did was, in terms of the actual revenue side of things, was getting our systems right. So I took over a clinic that had been petering along for a while, but if you're looking for a clinic to take over, you want to look at systems that you can optimize. Getting your vaccination reminders, getting your client communication right from the start. That's going to increase your revenue quite significantly, because you're going to have people actually coming in every year. You increase that, you increase your opportunities, and so that alone makes a big difference. And then it was just business as usual. Making sure that we were doing those same things, looking after the clients, following through. Being a good place to go.
You said before, and maybe you came back to the leadership training that you did at your previous practice. But whenever you step into a new team, right, provided that, the team was actually two, right, actually, and then one, right. But you saw, and like the smart thing you did was that you saw that your link to your clients, right, the clientele was this one staff member. So I'm assuming this staff member was kind of like the person next to the vet, right? Kind of like, so your vet went, so therefore this person now was their connection with the whole practice and so forth. But how did you, and like they talk about the act of deference, where you defer to that person in a way, right? You can't just go, okay, Sally, now that Bob's gone, now what we're going to do is we're going to do it my way, right? Okay. But what was that process of I don't know, winning Sally over, or because she had to endorse you essentially in the end, right? She answered the phone and she'd have to endorse you. How did you get her to accept change and endorse you? And
yeah. So her name is Danny. She's a superstar. But we took it really slowly. So I met her when I was thinking about buying the clinic. We met up a few times before we actually started working together, and it was conversations around values, a lot of it. And there were some values that were right on, and she admitted, she was like, I'm not comfortable with change. So I finally, we kind of agreed on the things that we could change and things that were really important for me to change, and some things that we thought, look, that'd be nice, but we don't need to change it right away. So that was just things like phone systems and computer systems and things like that were that comfort and the way that we do things. But it meant that by having that give and take, we could really, make the changes that were important moving forward. And then, a few months later, it was like, oh, maybe we can change that, or maybe we can do this, or maybe we can try that thing that you were talking about a few months ago. So the important things were super important, patient care, standards of care, different drugs, things like that were non-negotiables. But you just got to be flexible, because it's it's one of those challenges that, especially if you want them to stay on board and you want them to endorse you, because when Mary Jane comes in with her 3 cats, you want them to be like, oh my God, they're so good with cats, you're going to love them, you know? And so making sure that that endorsement was sincere was super important for me.
Yeah. Wasn't like, hey, Danny, there's no other vet clinic around here. If you want to stay in the town, you get, no, just, this is it.
It is a bit like that though, isn't it?
No, but that was awesome. Like, and like the first thing you went to was values, and that's beautiful. Dude, like, I love what you're saying, man. It's awesome.
What I'm taking from this is I certainly felt for a very long time that I couldn't possibly be equipped to be a good leader or to run a practice. It's a confidence thing, and that you have to have some personality trait or super skill or superpower to be able to do it. And maybe it takes 10 years to get there. And Zach's just showing, no, it doesn't. And you don't. You can just learn it. You just go and find the resources and learn it, because the stuff you talk about is, you see that in every good leadership book, any management book, and you're obviously just taking it and applying it, and it seems like it's working. It's fantastic.
Can I jump in with something? One of the quotes that I love, and there was an old guy, I think he's now gone. His name was Charlie Tremendous Jones. He was one of the first sort of motivational speakers on the circuits, and one of the things he said is you'll be the same person 5 years from now as you are today, except for the books that you read and the people that you meet. And that sort of really stuck with me early on in my journey and throughout, in that, who are you surrounding yourself with? Who influences you? And sometimes we don't have that network directly around us where you can't necessarily tap into those mentors. So you have to sort of find, virtual mentors in the way of books. And back then it was CDs or audio tapes, and now maybe podcasts, such as this awesome one. And things like that you listen to help influence your mindset. What was it for you, Zach? What were the books that you read, or the people that you met, or the conferences that you chose to surround yourself with? Because from what I know of you, you've done a lot of, you've surrounded yourself a lot with clinical learning. Like you said, you did a lot of AVA stuff. I know you've done a lot of stuff with vet education. A lot of that is clinical rather than business management, leadership sort of skills. So where did that stuff come from?
There's so much stuff that you do and that I've done, and it just builds on itself, year after year. I mean, starting at those conferences that I sat in as a student, but also courses that I was put through as an employee. I did Lincoln, Emerging Leaders. I did VetX with Dave Nichol, and then at conferences, trying to get your bum on the seat in as many, really good presentations as possible, and trying to get to as many courses as you can, whether that's sacrificing clinical learning to go to these courses, and even starting the practice. We'd shut down for a few days when it was a very small team and go to a conference altogether. And so, we just thought, miss out on a day or two of a few consults, because it was only a few consults a day at that time, and take the time to actually go away and focus on that.
Absolutely. It's such a positive change that I don't know if it's actually a change in the conference structure or just a change in the stuff I'm interested in, but I'm very happy to see that when you go to these conferences, there seems to be a much heavier trend towards developing yourself, developing your team, rather than just the clinical stuff. And it's very, very tempting, especially as a young vet, to just want to go and listen to all the newest, hottest clinical tips. But you're not actually doing yourself any favors. There's so much value. Like, I think I noticed at the conferences, a lot of younger vets focus very heavily on the clinical stuff, which is understandable. But those other stuff, the performance skills, they're not just for the practice owners and for the old farts. There's a lot of value. I've enjoyed some of those sessions immensely. Just communication skills, everything like that. That helps you so much.
And that's the thing. You can go to a clinical stream about a weird type of eye tumor, and that's going to have a really big impact on the one patient that you see that has that thing.
Absolutely.
Or you can go to session, or you can go to a course that's about communication and how you interact as a team and how you communicate things to clients, and that's going to impact every single time, every single day you go to work, and every single patient you see.
And beyond that, even that's the other thing. You sit in those courses and you learn about communicating and that, and you think you're learning for work, and then next time you have an argument with your wife, you go, "Hang on a minute, there's a better way of doing this." so it extends so far beyond just your working life. Right? So definitely one of the best investments you can make is investing in yourself as a leader, and even just not even as a leader, just as a part of a team. Absolutely.
Investing your time in those things. I mean, there's free books, there's free podcasts, there's so much stuff out there. I mean, you can find the information if you want to, and even if you can't get away to a conference or you can't afford that, you can get started. It's hard to look back and think where different parts come from. You read so many things and you listen to so many things and everything like that. I guess a lot of podcasts stuck out. What I find really interesting in the podcasting, and what got me onto like listening to lots of leadership stuff and reading lots of leadership stuff was a lot of behavioral economics and things about like how we actually think about the world, which was really interesting from a consulting side of thing. Like when you're in the consult room, how do your words influence what people do and the way that you say them? And then that's transferable to your interpersonal relationships and all through there. So there's a million podcasts out there, Freakonomics, things like that. But then in the vet space, I mean, got to give a lot of credit to Dave Nichol for his podcast. I mean, the guests and seeing the modeling, people on there from all parts of the world doing cool things in business and in the vet world is great. And then there's so many books out there, but Thinking Fast and Slow is a great one about how we make decisions, and just thinking about those things made me more interested in how to work in a team and how to work with clients, and so that kind of sparked the leadership interest.
It's a great time.
Awesome.
It's a great time for information. I think it every time I listen to a good podcast, I just go, man, what an absolute privilege. Here I am just driving home from work, having literally feels like you have two of the smartest people in the world driving along with you, just having a chat, and you can it's just like sitting at a dinner party and just eavesdropping, and you just absorb all of that knowledge. It's really an incredible time. I love it. Zach, do you guys do on call?
Yes, yeah, we do. So we've been through a bit of a journey with on call, and I can kind of see where the question's going. So I'll let you.
No. I'm just curious. How do you? Because did you say you've got another vet, or are you the only vet? Yeah,
so we've got part-time like vets who for reasons or another on call's not something that's feasible for them at the load that would split it equally between three, and that's fine. So fortunately I've put a lot of effort into trying to make good relationships with the other clinics around. So initially I was doing it, all myself. I did that for about 3 or 4 months because I thought this is what you got to do. You're new to the town, you've got to be there. And then I realized there's 6 clinics within a certain radius that are all doing on call. It's crazy. So tried a few times over the last 12 months to try to get a shared system in, and managed to have a clinic that helps me out with weekends and I do during the week. And now we're just about to start a shared rota between a few of the clinics.
Okay, excellent. Yeah, you've answered my question. The question was how do you take care of yourself? Because it is you've landed yourself in a high responsibility position. It's not you can't just clock off at the end of the day and go, well, now I don't care what happens to the place. It is to me, the biggest challenge of practice ownership is that constant. It's a ball and chain. Sometimes you can't get rid of it. And then how do you manage to get yourself out of that headspace and into a space where you actually have some proper time off? And obviously much, much, much harder when you actually 24/7, 365.
Yeah, it's impossible. And you've got to, just either, if you can't do it, just don't do out of hours. You've got a responsibility to your patients, but you've also got more responsibility to your future patients, so you don't want to burn yourself out. And so getting to a position where we can share, and it's building up that trust with other clinics. And when I was new to town, I'm sure it was like, who's this new person? What are they doing? What are they gonna do? But working in a cooperative and collaborative approach really is going to pay dividends for all of us.
It's a really interesting approach, because a lot of people in business see themselves as a bit of an island, and you're competing, and business can be very lonely. And I'm curious about that whole starting bit for you as well, because I know of a lot of vets who have gotten into practice because they hated the way their boss did things, and they had this kind of attitude like, right, I need my own clinic. I've got to do things my way, and that's why I'm going into business. And then, with that goes all the other isolation that comes with it. Now, obviously, it seems like you have a very different approach, and that wasn't your journey. What were your what was your motivation for doing it? Was it I don't like this practice, I don't like the way things are being done, I've got to do standards my way? Or was it more financial?
Look, I can't lie, financial is a factor, and anybody who goes into business, financial decisions have to be part of it, because you're investing your money. You don't invest your money in other things and make it not financial, apart from Gerardo's Audi. Which is there's a financial part, obviously. But for me, I guess one of the main motivations, like I said, was pushing myself, but wanting to be able to have a broader influence than just my patients and my little island of consulting. If you want to influence more people, you need a bigger team, and you need a bigger platform. And so, in the consult room, we've got this great opportunity to influence the pet owner in front of us. But then you can take that, and if I can grow my team, and then I can influence the pet care of all of these pets, and also influence the working hours and the environment and the kind of team environment that the vet team works in, because there's a lot of people aren't happy in our profession, and it seems like if you've got an opportunity to positively influence that, then you should.
I love it. Yeah, I love it.
Wow. So it seems like a much stronger drive for you is contribution and being able to empower and give back. Would that be fair?
Yeah, it's a massive contribution, and that's, I'm sure you all do, and I do a lot of time volunteering for different vet groups and things like that, and mentoring young vets, and you don't make money out of it, but it's important.
Yeah. So what's your vision for the clinic, for your business? What's your goal with it? What are you hoping? Well, you've said some of the things you want to achieve, but specifically for your business, where's it going?
So I want to grow it to probably double the size it is now, at least. In the town we are, it's you're limited by population in some sense, whereas you aren't so limited in say the cities or things like that. But I want to grow it to a point where it's a business that I can take a step back from and not be on the tools all the time. Being such a small clinic, being so new, there is that, you've got to keep working as a vet. And so getting it to that next stage where then we can, okay, let's take a step back, take more of a mentoring role is going to be really exciting. And then it's looking at, do you grow the current opportunity, or do you look for more opportunities elsewhere? But getting something that can have a life of its own is pretty exciting. So that's kind of the next goal.
Hey, Zach, it sounds like as if you made a lot of right decisions. I'm not saying you haven't made any wrong decisions, but sometimes it's hard to reflect and actually realize some of the challenges you faced and maybe the wrong decisions you made. Are there any wrong decisions that you made? Okay, I'm going to say wrong, okay, but decisions you made that upon reflection were like, oh, that was not a good call. But yeah, like buying a practice. No, just kidding.
There's a reason I was confident that I could deal with running a clinic on my own, and that was because I made a lot of mistakes as a clinician. Yeah. Not the clinical errors, but errors in, well, definitely those, I'm sure, but errors in client communication, errors in how to challenge, approach problems with the team. So many mistakes. There's one time where I had a parvo puppy in isolation and didn't latch the cage, and the next morning the whole clinic was covered in.
Oh,
So
love it.
massive errors. I mean, anybody who thinks that they can manage a parvo case worse than that, I challenge.
I'm actually going to better that story. I have managed it, made a worse decision with a parvo case when I was on outpatients as a student. So our in South Africa, I'm sure it's the same here, but we had one of the clinical rotations we do was called outpatients, where you are literally just consulting vet, and then the students had to do the overnights there. So in inpatient patient care. And then we had these little flatlets that you can go have a sleep in if it was pretty quiet. And it was Easter long weekend as well. So I was probably feeling very sorry for myself and very lonely that I was there all night by myself. And there was this gorgeous little Dachshund puppy in the parvo ward. In South Africa, we had tons of parvo. In the area that we were in was not the best socioeconomic area, so tons and tons. There's this one pup that wasn't all that sick, but just very sad, very sorry for itself. And I was feeling very sorry for myself. So I took it to the flatlet and put it in bed with me. And it had diarrhea in all the bed. I think that beats your story, right?
Oh gosh, yeah. That was a conscious decision to bring one of the most infectious diseases dogs can get out of isolation into your bed.
I'm just curious, did they lock you in the isolation ward for the next week?
I'm not an idiot. Clearly I'm an idiot, but I didn't let anybody know what happened. I washed all the sheets. But let's get back to the mistakes, Zach. In terms of either from what you've seen, because it really does, in terms of starting your practice, it sounds like you are doing things pretty right. Mistakes that you've made or that you've seen other people make, or even people who don't buy practices, are people making wrong decisions where you can go now, you can think differently about that?
Yeah, there's a couple of things. So I make mistakes still often. I mean, like I said, I'm a spring chicken, but I made a mistake. 2 weeks ago, we were transitioning to a new IT system, and we had a new vet starting, and then everything just broke with the computers. We looked like we were going to lose like months and months of data, no timeline on when it was happening. It's just an absolute disaster. And I was stressed out for like 48 hours, like to the nines. And when I was stressed out in that situation, I wasn't controlling my emotions and my communications as well as I should, as well as I normally do. And that then passed on to the team, and that was a big mistake, and that mistake has impacts, but then you can go back and you can say, hey, look, I stuffed up, and I've had that discussion with the team and said, look, this was, not the right way to handle it. And then we're going to move forward, and that was like 2 weeks ago, there's mistakes that are going to keep happening no matter what situation you're in, and you're going to keep making them.
They often talk about your inner circle, and I'm fortunate that I have these two fellas in my inner circle, as well as my partner and the business partners in AES, and like I got a coach and things as well. I need several people to keep me in line, but I don't know. Like I don't know what's your inner circle like. Kind of who keeps you grounded, or who kind of keeps you on track, but also who keeps you like looking big and having bigger visions, So is it self-driven, or is it actually you pick the right people?
Yeah, I've got plenty of people that keep me grounded. Yeah, the whole team work. It's a very flat, management pyramid, so to speak, in that sense. They like to remind me of my failings. But yeah, I guess having a life partner, my girlfriend, who keeps me brutally honest. If I say, oh, I'm going to go do that next week, and she's like, did you really? And just having people that remind you, that you're not the vet, you're not the boss, you're not that person, you're an actual person, is so important. And it's not just important for leaders, it's also important for all of us as practicing vets. We spend 8 hours of every day being the person in the room that knows the most, that guides the decisions and has so much influence over these clients of ours. But that's not who we are, and you got to remember that it's healthy to have people bring you down and also to have people bring you back up again.
Do you believe it's because they understand where you want and what you want and where you want to lead the practice, and so you shared your vision effectively in a way that they know when you're out of alignment, so they can bring you back in alignment, or they know that, hey, Zach's the guy that's going to lead us there, and he needs us now to slap him in the face and go, hey, dude, you can do this. Like, is it like, that's my take my thought would be, is it around vision and a common understanding and alignment between the team? How did you achieve that?
So I think there's the vision that you can set down and write down and write your goals up on a whiteboard and say, this is what we believe. But then there's also what you do every day and how you interact. So whenever we've got a challenge, as long as the person's comfortable sharing it, we'll sometimes use that to help other people. So I had a nurse the other day who was struggling with drug dose calculations. And I was like, look, this nurse over here sucked at that 3 months ago, and I got her in, I was like, hey, remember when that was a really big challenge? She was like, yeah, it used to be a problem. This is how I dealt with it. So it's this kind of trying to make it a safe space to stuff up, and doing it in small ways and be like, okay, this is really crap, so that when we do have a big error, and you guys run big, busy emergency hospitals, there's times when there's stuff ups, and you've got to be able to say, okay, that happened, let's move on, let's deal with it, and then go back later and know that it wasn't me today, but it could be me next time, and how I support that person or how I interact with that person at that time, that's going to be how I get treated next time.
So you role model the way of like a culture of learning and just acceptance, and was that something that you picked and chose, or was that something that your first initial boss role modeled that way as well?
Yeah, I think it's something that I consciously chose. This idea of failing small and failing often, and that's from Atul Gawande. He's a writer and surgeon, writes for the New York Times, and he writes a lot about complications and how you actually deal with medical errors. And the best way to deal with them is to own up to them and say, look, this is what happened. Let's assess it. Let's figure out a plan and let's move forward. But you can apply that not just to medical errors. You can apply that to everything. You apply it to communication errors and failings all over the place. Atul Gawande, Atul, and then the surname is Gawande, Gawande. Great book, Complications. You got to check it out.
Yeah, nice. Thank you.
That's really interesting. There was I attended a seminar once, and there were a whole lot of high-profile young entrepreneurs up on stage. This wasn't within the veterinary space; this is just general business. And there were guys your age and younger who had created multi-million-dollar businesses and sort of built it, sold it, moved on to the second one. Like, these guys were just killing it at a very young age, it would seem. And what was interesting is they had these young, 20 in their 20s people up on stage, and they asked them, what advice would you give yourself as an 18-year-old? And the astounding, the resonating advice that came out was fail faster. It was this concept of do it faster, fail faster, therefore you will learn faster, you'll grow faster. And I just want to talk about this just for a minute within the veterinary space, because, we are risk averse. We don't like to take risks with our patients. We beat ourselves up when we, lose a patient, make a clinical mistake, make a judgment error, a dose error, anything, upset a client, lose a client, even have a rejection in the consult room. When we suggest something and they say no, we find that like a personal sort of failure, and we take that to heart. How do you feel we as an industry, and I'd love to hear your take on it, how do you feel we need to start to approach failure as an industry?
That's huge. That's something that there's systemic things all through the people that we select for vet school. There's things all throughout uni, but then there's also what we can control in the workplace and with the clients. We've we've got to fail small and be prepared to look at what we've done and then learn enough about it that it doesn't happen that exact way again. So let's say we're doing a spay and we drop the ligature. Does someone sit down? Does someone say, "Oh, get out of the way. You're a crappy surgeon. I'm going to jump in there. I'm going to fix it. You're not doing surgery for a month," which is a literal real example that I know has happened to a peer of mine. Or do we say, "You know what? I'm just going to stand here, make your incision bigger. Let's go in. Let's take it systematically." And then afterwards, not in the heat of the moment, not when you're in this fight flight response, sit back and say, "Okay, what could we have done differently to do that better next time? How do we look at that? And what can we do? And what are you going to do moving forward?" And then teaching people to come up with their own solutions. So that becomes an internal debrief or an internal thing that you go through. And then you can even do it before the procedure, before while you're scrubbing in for a surgery. You go, "Okay, what happens if I drop the ligature?" Not catastrophizing, but thinking, "Okay, there's a system here. I can solve this." And if you just build up small things, big things, big things,
yep.
And before long you're making crazy decisions like starting a practice or taking a leadership role in the team, or you're trying that next surgery that has scared the bejesus out of you.
Yeah, the failure thing in our profession, I think we set up for it. You don't get into vet school through failing a lot. You got to do well at school, and then they're mostly high achievers in other fields as well. So I think we just don't have any practice at failing. So when you step into the real world where failure is right on your doorstep, we just don't handle it well. So I don't know how to change that. We need to. I suppose at vet school you fail quite a bit. Certainly most of us did.
Well, my take on that is actually it comes from your role model, right? It comes from the person you look up to, the person who's trained you. If there's no tolerance for failure, you'd be terrified of failure. Therefore, you'd always strive for perfection. You wouldn't take action because you're too scared of taking action unless it was perfect, right? You got to put shit out to the world to get feedback to see whether it works, right? But if your role model then accepts the fact that, and then shares the fact that what they learned was through small failures and failing safe, as you said before, then it creates the culture of, I'm going to try this, but I know that, that Zach's in the next room and I run through the plan with him. I'm going to give this a go because I can fail safe, and it's okay if I don't get it right. So I think role modeling the way is a key component of what I believe, Zach, it sounds like as if you've done. And there's so many aspects of leadership that you've just kind of, let's say, I doubt it's random. It's not random, right? You wouldn't be going through this process and getting to this point by random chance, right? You're taking deliberate actions about the way you want to interact, right? The way that you decided to transition to the practice, the way that you decided that you hate the gray zones. This is the gray zones. This is the blacks and whites when I come through. This is the level of, there was calculated decisions all the way through, including the way that you act and behave. And congratulations, man. You're 26, 27. Like now I'm only like 28, right? So, we're almost the same. And that's kidding. But like, it's incredible actually listening to you.
Well, we've got to wrap up, but I want to wrap up almost by saying my takeaways from listening to Zach. Well, other than that, I clearly was way behind Zach when I was Zach's age. way behind. But
you're only 29.
I can still catch up. I've got time to catch up. But the first thing is that there's no age limit on being able to do this. If you're in the right place, I know certainly personally, and I know a lot of it just felt, no, I'm too young. It's too much of a commitment. I don't think I've got it yet. You can do it. But then I think what you've done right is you're setting it right. You're setting it up right from the beginning by getting your values, as I said, talking to your staff about values, knowing exactly where you are taking the practice and being clear about that. And then the other thing that same thing as Gerardo, I can hear it in what you're saying. You're clearly investing in yourself as a leader and as a person. You see so many practice owners who start the practice and they're so overwhelmed by the day-to-day administration and the clinical cases. They're so buried on all the clinical stuff that they just never ever take any time to work on themselves. And it shows in how those practices are run, and I've worked for plenty of them, and I'm guilty of it myself. But I think just investing in yourself from the beginning and saying, like, this is how I'm going to grow and become a better leader, become better at everything. I'm not the complete picture. I'm open to learning. I think that is going to be your key to kicking this one out the park. It's going to do great, I think.
I know a lot of younger vets at your level, they're still grappling with the basics. Like, they're thinking, do I still want to be a vet or not? You know, how can I, and they end up sort of reaching a plateau where they stop growing and they start to refer everything. They kind of reach the limit and they go, this is as far as I can get to clinically, as far as leadership goes or growth, etc. And I kind of, this is it, I'm maxing out here and I'm going to refer everything else or defer everything to somebody else. How have your peers responded to you, and how have you had to change? Have you had to sort of select new friends to allow you to still grow forward? Have you had to swap up, if you know what I mean?
No, I think my friends are the ones that like I say, keep me grounded. But we're all growing in different directions. You know, there's people going into residencies, there's people taking on leadership roles, there's people who are starting families. So everyone's going off in these different directions. And I think that's the role of friends in that space, is to keep you grounded and keep you honest. But also you talk about that diversity in your family and in your community. You know, you want to have people that challenge you in lots of different ways.
We'll call it a day there. I really appreciate the time, Zach. Thanks for putting your hand up and being willing to talk to us. Have a lovely week, everybody, and we'll catch you next time.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening. Remember to go check out the show notes at thevetvault.com for a summary of some of the best bits from the episodes and our guests' favorite resources. If you found value in this and you can think of a friend or a colleague who could benefit from the content, then please do them a favor and share this episode with them.